Hello there, and welcome to Simple Science for Sleep. Tonight, we explore the world of trains, and you have probably heard one today. A single train car weighs as much as 10 elephants, yet it moves on a ribbon of steel thinner than your finger. This is a place for calm curiosity and rest, so settle in somewhere comfortable. Let your mind wander with me. Picture a single train car. It weighs about 70 tons. That is the weight of 10 full-grown elephants standing together. And yet, it moves smoothly, almost silently, gliding on 2 ribbons of steel. How does something so heavy move so easily? The answer hides in something so small you would barely notice it. Where the wheel meets the rail. Just a tiny patch of metal touching metal, about the size of a dime. That is all. One small circle of contact holding up all that weight. Steel wheels on steel rails create almost no friction. Imagine ice sliding on ice. That is how smooth it is, but even smoother. When a train wheel rolls, it barely fights against the track. The resistance is so small, it almost disappears. This is why one locomotive can pull 100 cars behind it. Each car weighs tons, but the friction is so low that pulling them takes less force than you would think. A truck hauling the same weight would burn through fuel and struggle on every hill. The train just keeps rolling. Think about pushing a heavy box across a floor. Now imagine that same box on wheels. Suddenly, it moves with just a gentle push. Train wheels work like this. But even better, because both the wheel and the track are made of the same hard steel. The wheel is not completely flat where it touches the rail. It has a gentle curve, a taper. This taper does something clever. When the train goes around a curve, the outside wheel travels a bit farther than the inside wheel. The taper lets this happen naturally. The train steers itself without anyone controlling it. You are carrying this knowledge with you now. Every time you see a train, you will notice how effortlessly it moves, how something so massive can seem to float. The engineers who figured this out changed everything. Before trains, moving heavy things meant horses and wagons. Slow, exhausting, limited, but steel on steel made the impossible suddenly simple. Mountains of coal, entire forests of lumber, all moving across countries with just one engine pulling. If this brings you calm, if you enjoy these quiet journeys through science, I would love for you to join our community. Hit that subscribe button. It helps more people find this peaceful space. And leave a comment telling me where you are listening from. What time is it there? I love knowing we are all scattered across the world, finding rest together in these small wonders. Let me show you just how little friction we are talking about. If you pushed a train car on level ground with no brakes, it would roll for miles before stopping. Miles. Just from one push. The momentum carries it because nothing is fighting to slow it down. This is the magic that made the modern world possible. Everything you see around you, chances are it traveled by train at some point. The bricks in buildings, the food in stores, the materials in your phone, all of it riding on this beautiful trick of physics. A freight train can weigh 10,000 tons when fully loaded. That is the weight of a small mountain. But the locomotive pulling it uses less energy per ton than a truck on a highway. Because steel on steel is that efficient, that elegant. Next time you hear a train passing in the distance, picture those wheels. See that tiny point of contact. Imagine all that weight balanced on circles of steel, no bigger than coins. Feel how something so heavy can move so lightly. This is the first secret of trains. the foundation everything else builds on, weight that floats, mass that glides, power that whispers instead of shouts. And somewhere right now, a train is moving across the landscape, its wheels turning in rhythm, carrying weight that should be impossible to move, but moving it anyway, smoothly, endlessly, while we rest here together in the quiet. Those wheels turning in rhythm create something else, something you have heard 1,000 times, a sound that makes your shoulders relax without you even noticing. The clickety-clack of a train. It happens where two pieces of rail meet. Modern tracks are welded together in long stretches. But there are still joints, small gaps where one rail ends and another begins. When a wheel crosses that gap, it clicks. Then the next wheel crosses. Click, then the next. Click, click, click. A rhythm as steady as a heartbeat. Your brain loves this. Predictable patterns feel safe. Our ancestors needed to know what sounds meant danger, and what sounds meant everything was fine. A regular rhythm meant normal, peaceful, nothing to worry about. That same ancient wiring still lives in you. The sound of a distant train travels differently than other noises. It moves through the ground as much as through the air. You feel it as much as hear it. A low rumble that vibrates in your chest. This is why train sounds seem to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Train horns follow a pattern too. 2 long blasts. 1 short. 1 long. This is the signal for a crossing. Engineers blow this same sequence at every intersection. Always the same. Wherever you are in the country, that sound means the same thing. It has been that way for over 100 years. The horn itself is designed to cut through distance. Low frequencies travel farther than high ones. A train horn uses multiple notes at once, usually 3 tones playing together. This creates a chord, a sound that carries for miles without getting lost in wind or trees. When a train approaches, the horn sounds higher. As it passes and moves away, the pitch drops lower. This is called the Doppler effect. The sound waves bunch up as the train comes toward you. They stretch out as it moves away. Your ears hear this as a change in pitch. This rising and falling creates a kind of music. Not planned, not composed, but music nonetheless. The train becomes an instrument, playing a song that only happens once. That exact combination of speed and distance and wind will never exist again in quite that way. At night, train sounds carry even farther. Cold air near the ground bends sound waves, makes them travel along the surface instead of up into the sky. This is why you hear trains more clearly after sunset. Why a horn 5 miles away sounds close enough to touch. Inside a moving train, passengers hear a different sound, a steady thrumming, the wheels beneath them spinning at 70 miles per hour, the air rushing past windows. It all blends into white noise, a blanket of sound that covers other sounds. This is why people sleep so well on trains. The rhythm never changes, unlike a car that speeds up and slows down, unlike a plane that hits turbulence. A train on straight track maintains perfect consistency. Your body can predict what comes next. Prediction brings comfort. Comfort brings rest. Some trains have a signature sound. Old locomotives that chug. Modern electric trains that hum. Freight trains that groan under their weight. Each one tells a story just by how it sounds, where it has been, what it carries, how fast it moves. You can close your eyes right now and picture a train passing. You know exactly what it sounds like. That knowledge lives somewhere deep in your memory. Even if you have not heard a train in years, the sound is still there, waiting, familiar. This is why people play recordings of trains to fall asleep. The sound connects to something primal, something that says you are safe. The world is in order. Everything is moving as it should. Somewhere tonight, a train horn echoes across empty fields. The wheels click their steady rhythm on steel rails. The sound travels through the darkness, reaching into bedrooms miles away. A lullaby from a machine, a promise that tomorrow the trains will still be running, still connecting, still singing their old familiar song. And that sound, that rhythm, that pattern, it tells us we can rest. That song plays on an instrument built to last a century, the rails beneath the wheels, two parallel lines of steel stretching to the horizon. The space between those rails is exactly 4 feet and 8.5 inches. This seems random, but it traces back 2,000 years, to Roman war chariots. Roman chariots needed to fit 2 horses side by side. That width became the standard for wagon wheels throughout Europe. When wagons wore ruts into stone roads, other wagons had to match those ruts or break their wheels. The measurement stuck, spread, became the only width that made sense. When railways were invented, the builders used the same width. Their tools were designed for it. Their workers knew it. The factories that made wheels already had the equipment. So, trains inherited the width of Roman chariots. And now, it is locked in. Miles and miles of track, all matching a measurement from ancient Rome. Look closer at a rail, and you will see something odd. A tiny gap between each section, about the width of your finger. This gap is not a mistake. It is survival. Steel expands when it gets hot, contracts when it gets cold. A single rail can grow 6 inches longer on a summer day. If the rails were welded tight with no room to grow, they would buckle, warp, push themselves right off the ground. The gap gives the steel room to breathe, space to expand and contract with the seasons. In summer, the gap closes. In winter, it opens wide again. The rail grows and shrinks, but stays in place. Modern rails are welded in sections as long as a quarter mile, but they still need expansion joints, places where the rail can move without breaking. Engineers place these joints carefully. They calculate exactly how much the steel will grow. Then, they leave just enough space. The rail itself is shaped like a capital turned on its side, wide on top where the wheel touches, wide on the bottom where it sits on the ties, narrow in the middle. This shape is strong without being heavy. It spreads the weight of the train across the wood or concrete ties beneath it. Those ties sit about 2 feet apart, close enough to support the rail, but far enough apart to save money and materials. Each tie is soaked in creosote, a thick black liquid that keeps the wood from rotting. That sharp smell you catch near train tracks, that is creosote. The ties rest on gravel, tons and tons of crushed rock called ballast. This gravel does several jobs at once. It drains water away from the wood. It distributes weight across the ground. It lets workers adjust the track height by adding or removing stones, and it keeps plants from growing up through the ties. A single mile of track uses about 3,000 tons of ballast, all of it precisely placed, all of it doing quiet work to keep the rails level and stable. Rails wear down over time. The constant friction of wheels polishes the top surface smooth and shiny. Eventually, the rail gets too thin, too weak. Workers replace it before it fails. The old rail gets recycled, melted down, turned into a new rail somewhere else. Some rails have been in place for 100 years, still carrying trains, still doing their job. The steel is that durable, that well made. Engineers in the 1800s built things to outlast themselves. And they did. When you stand next to a train track, you can feel the weight of this history. The design choices made generations ago. The Roman chariots, the expansion gaps, the creosote smell. All of it still here, still working, still holding up tons of steel moving at high speed. The rails guide the train with almost no effort. The tapered wheels we talked about earlier follow the rails naturally. The whole system works together. Wheels shaped to steer, rails spaced to fit, gaps placed to allow movement, ballast spread to support weight. Nothing flashy, nothing complicated, just simple physics and good engineering, built to last, built to carry the world forward one wheel rotation at a time. And tonight, those rails stretch out under stars, waiting, ready, strong enough for whatever comes rolling their way tomorrow. Those rails wear smooth under the journey of countless wheels. Let me tell you about one of them, a single wheel, and the extraordinary life it lives. A train wheel starts as molten steel in a foundry, poured hot and glowing into a mold. It cools slowly over days. This slow cooling makes it strong. Rush it, and the metal becomes brittle. Patience creates durability. Once cooled, the wheel gets machined, ground down to exact measurements. The taper we talked about earlier gets cut at a precise angle. Too steep, and the train will not steer properly. Too shallow, and it will derail on curves. The tolerance is measured in fractions of a millimeter. Then, the wheel gets married to its axle. The two become one unit. They will spend their entire working life together, never separated unless something breaks. A freight train wheel will travel about 1 million miles before it needs replacing. That is the distance from Earth to the Moon and back twice. All of it on 2 ribbons of steel. All of it carrying tons of weight. The wheel does not stay the same shape through this journey. Every rotation wears it down slightly. The friction that is so small still adds up over millions of revolutions. The top surface slowly changes, gets flatter, smoother, polished by constant contact. Engineers measure this wear carefully. They use special tools that can detect changes smaller than a hair's width. When the wheel gets too thin, or the taper gets too shallow, it is time for the shop. The wheel goes to a place called a wheel truing facility. Massive machines hold the wheel steady while cutting tools spin around it. They shave off a thin layer of metal, restore the proper taper, make it round again. This process can happen several times in a wheel's life. Each time it gets slightly smaller, but it keeps working, keeps rolling, until finally there is not enough metal left to reshape. Then, and only then, does the wheel retire. Even in retirement, the wheel has value. It gets melted down. The steel becomes part of a new wheel, or a rail, or a bridge beam. Nothing goes to waste. The metal just changes jobs. Some wheels have stories written into their surface. Flat spots from emergency braking, gouges from debris on the tracks. Each mark is evidence of a moment, a decision, an event that happened years ago but left its signature in steel. Wheel shops are quiet places, the opposite of what you would expect. The machines hum steadily. Workers move with practiced precision. There is something meditative about the work, taking something worn and making it new again, giving it another 1,000,000 miles. The wheel does not know where it has been. It cannot remember the mountains crossed, the cities passed through, the seasons weathered, but the metal remembers in its own way. The wear patterns tell the story. Heavy loads leave different marks than light ones. straight tracks wear differently than curves. A train wheel experiences forces you and I can barely imagine. Hundreds of tons pressing down. Rapid temperature changes from braking, vibrations that never stop, and yet it holds. It endures. It keeps its shape and does its job. Think about your own journey through life, the wear you accumulate, the way experiences shape you, smooth you down in some places, leave marks in others. Train wheels are not so different. They start out rough and become refined through use. When a wheel finally reaches the end of its service life, it has likely supported billions of pounds, traveled farther than most humans will ever go, survived heat and cold, and everything in between. Not bad for a circle of steel. Right now, millions of these wheels are turning, each one on its own journey. Some brand new, some nearing retirement, all of them rolling forward, carrying the weight, doing the work they were shaped to do. And in workshops scattered across the country, skilled hands are restoring wheels, giving them another chance, another million miles, another lifetime of service on the rails. Those wheels need something to turn them. Power has to come from somewhere. Let me show you where. At the front of the train sits the engine room. This is where electricity or diesel fuel becomes motion, where energy transforms into the force that pulls 100 cars. Modern freight trains mostly use diesel-electric locomotives. This sounds complicated, but the idea is simple. A diesel engine the size of a small car sits inside the locomotive. It burns fuel and spins a generator. That generator makes electricity. The electricity flows to motors attached to the wheels. The motors turn the wheels. Why this extra step? Why not just connect the diesel engine straight to the wheels like a car? Because diesel engines are picky. They only work well at certain speeds. Too slow and they stall. Too fast and they break. But electric motors are flexible. They work at any speed. So the diesel engine runs at its favorite speed all the time. The electric motors handle the actual wheel turning. This system gives the train incredible pulling power. Electric motors deliver their full strength immediately. No waiting, no revving up, just instant force. This is why trains can start moving even when pulling thousands of tons. The electricity flows through cables as thick as your arm. These cables carry enough power to run a small town. They connect the generator to motors mounted on the axles. Usually 4 or 6 motors per locomotive. Each one as powerful as several car engines combined. Inside these motors, copper wire wraps around iron cores. When electricity flows through the wire, it creates a magnetic field. That field pushes against permanent magnets. The push becomes rotation. Rotation becomes movement. This happens thousands of times per second. Some trains use pure electric power. They draw electricity from overhead wires or a third rail beside the track. These trains are quieter. No diesel engine rumbling, just the hum of electric motors and the click of wheels on rails. The overhead wire is called a catenary. It hangs above the track, held up by poles every few hundred feet. A device on top of the train, called a pantograph, reaches up and touches this wire. Spring pressure keeps them in contact, even as the train bounces and sways. Electricity flows down through the pantograph into the train's systems, gets converted to the right voltage, then feeds the motors. The whole process happens invisibly, silently, power flowing from wire to wheel in milliseconds. The engineer in the cab controls all this with a throttle. It looks like a handle with numbered positions. Position 1 sends a little power to the motors. Position 8 sends maximum power. The engineer watches the speed and adjusts accordingly. But there is more happening than just the throttle. Computers manage the power flow. They prevent the wheels from spinning uselessly. They distribute electricity evenly between motors. They monitor temperatures and voltages. All of this happens automatically, while the engineer focuses on the track ahead. Braking uses the same motors in reverse. When the engineer applies the brakes, the motors become generators. They resist the turning wheels and convert that motion back into electricity. This electricity either goes back into the overhead wire or gets burned off as heat in giant resistors. This is called dynamic braking. It saves wear on the mechanical brakes, lets the train slow down smoothly without squealing or jerking. The energy of motion becomes electrical energy. Then that energy becomes heat and dissipates into the air. The whole system is elegant, simple in concept, complex in execution. But it works the same way whether the train carries passengers or coal, whether it travels fast or slow. The power flows, the motors turn, the wheels roll, and somewhere right now, an engineer is easing the throttle forward. Electricity is surging through copper cables. Motors are spinning up. Wheels are beginning to turn. Another train starting its journey. Another load moving across the landscape, all powered by this quiet dance of electricity and magnetism and steel. That train starting its journey is already running on a schedule written months ago. Down to the minute, sometimes down to the second. Train scheduling is a kind of mathematics most people never see. Thousands of trains sharing the same tracks, all of them needing to be in different places at the exact right time. None of them allowed to crash. The schedulers who figure this out work with software that looks like a giant graph. Time runs along one axis, distance along the other. Each train appears as a diagonal line moving through space and time. The scheduler's job is to make sure no two lines ever cross. A freight train leaving Los Angeles at midnight needs to reach Chicago in 3 days. But it shares track with passenger trains that travel twice as fast, and local trains that stop every 20 miles. All of these lines must weave between each other without touching. The schedulers add buffer time, padding. If a train is supposed to pass through a station at 2 in the afternoon, they might schedule it for 1:50. This gives 10 minutes of cushion, room for small delays, space to breathe, but delays multiply. One train running late blocks the train behind it. That train's delay blocks another train. Within hours, dozens of trains are waiting. The whole system backs up like traffic on a highway. This is why freight trains sometimes sit on sidings, those short pieces of track branching off the main line. They pull over to let faster trains pass. It looks like waiting, but it is actually choreography, making space for the dance to continue. Dispatchers watch all of this in real time. They sit in control centers, looking at screens full of moving dots. Each dot is a train. Each has a schedule. The dispatcher's job is to keep them moving without collision. When something goes wrong, the dispatcher has seconds to decide. Reroute this train. Slow that one down. Hold a third one at the next station. Every choice affects a dozen other trains. The ripples spread. The system runs on something called track warrants, permission to use a specific section of track. Only one train gets a warrant for any section at a time. This prevents collisions. When a train finishes with its section, it releases the warrant. the next train can claim it. All of this happens through radio communication. The dispatcher calls the engineer, reads the warrant details, track section, speed limit, time window. The engineer reads it back to confirm, then proceeds. In busy areas, trains might pass within minutes of each other. The timing has to be perfect. Too early, and the first train is still on the track. Too late, and the schedule falls apart. Passenger trains complicate everything. They have priority. Freight trains must yield to them. So schedulers build this into the plan. They know which tracks passenger trains use and when. They route freight around those times and places. Some trains have appointments. They must deliver cargo at specific times. Miss the window and the customer gets angry. Money gets lost. Contracts get broken. So, these trains get priority too. The scheduler juggles all these competing needs. The most impressive part is that this works. Day after day. Thousands of trains moving across a continent. Almost all of them on time. Almost none of them crashing. It is coordination on a massive scale, made possible by careful planning and constant attention. Engineers learn to trust the system. They follow their warrants, stay on schedule, know that someone is watching. Someone is making sure the track ahead is clear. Someone is keeping all the pieces moving together. At night, when fewer trains run, the system gets easier. More space, more flexibility, but the watching never stops. Dispatchers work in shifts around the clock. The screens never go dark. The coordination never ends. Right now, a dispatcher somewhere is moving trains like chess pieces, thinking 3 moves ahead, keeping the whole system flowing, making sure a train in Nevada does not collide with a train in Utah, making sure schedules hold, making sure the dance continues, and the trains keep moving, on time, in rhythm, each one trusting that the path ahead is clear. Some of those trains moving through the night carry people trying to sleep. Entire cars designed as moving bedrooms, rolling hotels on rails. Sleeping cars were invented in the 1860s by a man named George Pullman. He understood something simple. If people could sleep while traveling, they could travel farther, go places that would otherwise take too long. The first sleeper cars were basic, benches that folded into beds, curtains for privacy. Not much else, but they changed everything. Suddenly, you could board a train in New York at dinner time and wake up in Chicago for breakfast. Modern sleeping cars are more sophisticated. Small rooms with real beds, sinks, sometimes even showers. But the principle stays the same. Give people a place to rest while the miles roll by underneath. The beds in a sleeper car are narrow, just wide enough for one person. The rooms are compact, everything within arm's reach. This tight design is not just about saving space. It is about security. In a small room, your body touches the walls slightly. This contact is comforting, like being held. The train's motion becomes part of sleep. The gentle rocking, the steady rhythm. Your inner ear detects the sway and sends signals to your brain. These are the same signals you experienced as a baby being rocked. They trigger ancient responses. Calm, safety, rest. The sound helps too. That white noise we talked about earlier. Inside a sleeper car, it is even more present. The wheels beneath you, the air outside. It all blends into a constant hum that masks other sounds. Your brain stops listening for danger, stops staying alert. Let's go. Overnight trains follow specific routes. They time their schedules, so you board after dinner and arrive after breakfast. The boring middle hours happen while you sleep. You skip the tedium, wake up somewhere new. There is something magical about sleeping through distance, going to bed in one place and waking in another. It feels like time travel, like you closed your eyes and the world rearranged itself. The attendants on overnight trains speak softly, move quietly. They know their passengers are trying to sleep. They dim the lights in the corridors, keep announcements to a minimum, create an atmosphere of rest. Some people cannot sleep on trains. The motion bothers them instead of soothing them. But most people find the opposite. They sleep better on a train than in their own bed. The movement becomes a lullaby. The journey becomes rest. European overnight trains cross entire countries while passengers sleep. You can board in Paris and wake in Venice, sleep through the Alps, miss the border crossings. The train does the traveling for you. In Japan, overnight trains once connected the islands. Special ferries carried entire trains across the water. You could sleep through a sea crossing, never leave your bed. The engineering required to make this work was extraordinary. Rails that lined up perfectly, ships stable enough to not disturb sleeping passengers. Most of those ferry trains are gone now, replaced by faster options. But the memory remains, the idea that you could sleep through anything, even an ocean. The best sleeper cars have windows beside the bed. You can lie there and watch the dark landscape pass, see towns lit up in the distance, watch stars move across the frame of the window. The view constantly changes, but your body stays still. Some travelers keep the curtain open all night. They wake occasionally and check the view, see where they are, then go back to sleep. The journey becomes part of their dreams. Others close the curtain completely, make the room as dark as possible, pretend they are not moving at all, just sleeping in a very narrow bed. The motion becomes subliminal, present but not noticed. Either way, the train keeps moving. The schedule continues. The rails stretch ahead into darkness, and inside the sleeping cars, people rest, trusting the engineers, trusting the steel, trusting the system to deliver them safely to morning. While you sleep on that train, you cross bridges you never see. Structures built to hold impossible weight over impossible distances. A freight train weighs thousands of tons. The bridge beneath it must hold all of that, and do it without bending, without breaking, sometimes for over 100 years. Train bridges are different from car bridges. Cars are light. They spread out. 100 cars on a bridge creates distributed weight, but a train is concentrated mass. All those tons packed into a narrow line. The bridge feels every ounce. Engineers who design train bridges work with smaller safety margins than you might think. They calculate exactly how much the bridge can hold. Then they subtract 20% for safety. That is the limit. Trains heavier than that cannot cross. Every bridge gets weighed regularly. Not the bridge itself, the trains that cross it. Sensors in the track measure weight as the train passes. Too heavy, and the train gets stopped before it reaches the bridge. Wooden trestle bridges look fragile, like they might collapse under a strong wind. Crisscrossed beams holding up a track hundreds of feet in the air. But those beams are doing complex mathematics. Each one distributes force to its neighbors. The load spreads through the entire structure. When wind pushes on a trestle, the bridge sways. This looks terrifying, but the sway is survival. A rigid bridge would snap. A flexible bridge bends and returns. The wood gives just enough, then holds. Some of these trestles were built in the 1800s. They still carry trains today. The wood has turned grey with age, but it has not rotted. The engineers chose their materials carefully. Dense woods that resist decay, treated with preservatives that soak deep into the grain. Steel bridges use a different strategy. Instead of flexibility, they use sheer strength, massive beams and girders, rivets the size of your fist holding everything together. These bridges do not sway. They stand firm and dare the weight to try them. The longest railroad bridge in the world crosses a lake in Louisiana. 24 miles of bridge. If you are on a train crossing it, you spend half an hour over water. Looking out the window shows only lake in all directions. The shore disappears behind you long before the other shore appears ahead. That bridge sits on thousands of concrete pilings driven deep into the lake bottom. Each piling took weeks to pour. The concrete had to cure underwater. Special formulas that harden even when submerged. The engineering required just to build the foundations took years. Some bridges arch. This shape is ancient. Romans built arches because they understood that the shape distributes weight naturally. The load flows down through the curve into the supports. No single point holds too much. Modern train bridges use this same principle with modern materials. Steel arches instead of stone. But the physics stays the same. Weight flows. Stone or steel. Ancient or modern. The arch works. Suspension bridges carry trains on cables. Enormous steel cables as thick as tree trunks. These cables hang from towers and support the deck below. When a train crosses, the cables stretch slightly. Microscopic changes in length, but they stretch. This flexibility prevents breaking. The towers that hold these cables must be anchored deep, sometimes hundreds of feet into bedrock. The force trying to topple them is enormous. Only stone beneath stone can resist that pull. Every bridge makes sound when trains cross. A deep resonance. The vibration of all that mass moving across all that structure. People who live near train bridges know this sound, feel it in their homes. A rumbling that announces each passing train. And yet, these bridges stand. Year after year, storm after storm, train after train. The engineers who built them understood forces you and I can barely imagine. They did the mathematics, placed the beams, drove the pilings, created passages where nature said none should exist. Tonight, trains are crossing bridges in darkness, over rivers, over valleys, over distances that seem impossible. And the bridges hold. They always hold. Some obstacles cannot be crossed from above. They must be pierced. Mountains too tall for bridges, hills too steep for tracks. So, engineers drilled through them. Train tunnels are older than you might think. The first ones were hand-dug in the early 1800s. Men with pickaxes and dynamite, working by candlelight, advancing feet per day through solid rock. The longest tunnel took 17 years to complete. Thousands of workers. Hundreds died. They drilled from both ends toward the middle. The two teams met underground with less than an inch of error. This was before computers, before lasers, just careful mathematics and steady hands. Inside a mountain, darkness is absolute, the kind of dark where your eyes never adjust. Train tunnels pierce through this, a tube of air and space carved through billions of tons of stone. Modern tunnel boring machines do the work now. These machines are as long as several train cars. A circular cutting head at the front spins and grinds through rock. Behind it, concrete segments get installed to form the tunnel walls. the machine inches forward, day and night, months at a time. But the machine cannot do everything. Workers still go in. They maintain equipment. They check the walls. They breathe air that gets pumped in from the surface. Without ventilation, the tunnel would fill with dust and exhaust, become unbreathable within hours. When a train enters a tunnel, the air ahead of it has nowhere to go. It compresses, builds pressure. This pressure wave travels through the tunnel faster than the train itself. It can damage eardrums, crack windows. So, engineers design pressure relief shafts, vertical holes drilled up to the surface. The compressed air escapes through these shafts instead of building to dangerous levels. Inside the tunnel, your ears pop as the train passes through these pressure changes. The same sensation as an airplane taking off. Your body noticing the shift in air pressure around you. Some tunnels run under the ocean. The English Channel Tunnel connects Britain to France. Trains travel 150 feet below the seabed. The weight of water above pressing down on the tunnel roof. But the tunnel holds, lined with concrete 2 feet thick, sealed against the sea. Passengers in the Channel Tunnel see nothing but darkness and fluorescent lights for 20 minutes. Half the crossing. When they emerge on the other side, they are in a different country, a different language, a different world, all without seeing sky. The darkness in tunnels is not just absence of light. It is the presence of millions of tons of mountain. The weight above does not crush the tunnel because the tunnel is perfectly round, or close to it. Curved walls distribute the pressure. No weak points, no corners where force can concentrate. Engineers test this with math first. They calculate how much pressure the walls will face. Then they build the tunnel stronger than necessary. Then they test it. Then they add more strength. Only after all of this does the first train pass through. Some tunnels have emergency exits every few hundred feet. Small side passages leading to stairs. These stairs climb to the surface. If a train breaks down in the tunnel, passengers can walk to safety. The darkness becomes less frightening, knowing there is always a way out. The longest train tunnel stretches 35 miles through the Alps. At its deepest point, the tunnel runs 1.5 miles underground. The rock temperature at that depth reaches over 100 degrees. Cooling systems run constantly to keep the air breathable. Workers building that tunnel faced water that burst through the rock face. Underground rivers they did not know existed. The water had to be pumped out constantly, redirected, controlled. The tunnel became a riverbed for water that once flowed through cracks in the mountain. And now trains pass through in 17 minutes. What took millions of years for water to carve, trains cross in less time than a sitcom episode. All that work, all that struggle, reduced to a brief passage through darkness. Somewhere tonight, a train is entering a tunnel, the darkness swallowing it completely. And then, minutes later, emerging into air and starlight on the other side. When the train emerges from the tunnel, it eventually arrives somewhere. A station, a place built specifically for pausing. Train stations are designed for waiting. High ceilings that make voices echo. Long benches facing the tracks. Clocks visible from every angle. Everything about the architecture says slow down. You have time. The best stations have natural light. Huge windows or glass roofs. Sunlight streams in and creates patterns on the floor. These patterns shift through the day. Morning light hits different angles than afternoon light. The station becomes a sundial. Early stations were grander than they needed to be. Marble columns, ornate ceilings, chandeliers. This was intentional. Stations were meant to impress, to show that the railroad company was successful, that train travel was important, special. Many of those grand stations still exist, their elegance faded but present, the marble worn smooth by millions of footsteps, the brass rails polished by countless hands. They carry their history in every surface. Empty train stations at dawn are peaceful, in a way few places can match. The tracks stretch away in both directions. The platform sits waiting, the benches empty, everything still and ready. The pigeons know the train schedule. They gather when trains are due, hoping for dropped food, crumbs. The moment the train leaves, they return to their perches in the rafters. They have learned the rhythm. They understand the pattern. Station clocks are synchronized to atomic precision. Every clock in every station shows exactly the same time. This is critical. A train leaves at exactly 3:12, not 3:11, not 3:13. The schedule depends on everyone agreeing what time it means. Some stations serve only a few trains per day, small towns with modest platforms. The station might be just a shelter and a bench, but it is still a station, still a place where people wait for the world to arrive and take them somewhere else. Others serve hundreds of trains. Grand Central in New York, Union Station in Los Angeles. These are not just stations. They are cities within cities. Restaurants, shops, thousands of people moving through every hour. But even in the busiest stations, you can find quiet corners, places where the crowd thins, where you can sit and watch without being part of the rush. The station flows around you. You become an island in the stream. Train stations were once the heart of every town, the place where news arrived, where strangers came from far away, where the connection to the wider world touched down. Before phones, before internet, the station was how you reached beyond your town. Some of that magic remains. Waiting on a platform still feels like standing at a threshold. The train will arrive. It will take you somewhere. For now, you wait. And the waiting itself has value. Time to think. Time to notice. Time to simply be present. The announcement systems in stations use specific tones. A chime before each message. This chime was carefully chosen. Loud enough to hear over crowd noise. Gentle enough not to startle. The same chime in stations worldwide. A universal sound that means pay attention. Platform edges are painted yellow. This bright line says, stay back. Trains create wind as they arrive. That wind can pull you forward if you stand too close. The yellow line is safety, a clear boundary between waiting and danger. In winter, stations become warm refuges. People who have nowhere else to go sometimes shelter there. The station does not judge. It simply stays open, stays warm, offers a bench and a roof. At night, stations go quiet. The last train leaves. Workers clean the floors, turn off most of the lights. The station rests, gathers itself for tomorrow when the first train will arrive before dawn and the cycle will begin again. Right now, stations all over the world are waiting, their clocks ticking in perfect synchronization, their platforms empty or full, their architecture holding space for the human need to gather, to pause, to wait together for what comes next. From that quiet station, trains leave and enter a conversation. Not with words, with lights, a language spoken in colors that keeps thousands of trains from ever meeting where they should not. Train signals stand beside the tracks every few miles. Tall poles with colored lights, red, yellow, green. the same colors as traffic lights, but the meaning goes deeper. A green light means the track ahead is clear for 2 miles. Not just empty, actually clear. No other train. No broken rail. No obstacle. The signal confirms all of this before it turns green. Yellow means caution. Another train is somewhere in the next section. Or there is a slow order. Or the track curves sharply ahead. Prepare to stop, but do not stop yet. Red means stop. Always. No exceptions. A red signal is absolute. Behind it lies danger. Another train, a broken bridge, an open switch. Something that will cause disaster if you pass. How does the signal know these things? The track itself is part of the system. It forms an electrical circuit. When a train enters a section of track, its metal wheels connect the 2 rails. This completes the circuit. The signal detects this and turns red for trains behind. This is beautifully simple. No computers required. No communication towers. Just electricity flowing through steel. The train announces its own presence by existing on the track. Engineers trust these signals completely. They have to. Trains cannot stop quickly. A freight train at full speed needs over a mile to stop. So the engineer sees a yellow light and starts slowing down immediately. Sees red and applies full brakes. The signals do more than prevent collisions. They control speed through curves. They mark grade crossings. They indicate which track is active when lines split. An entire language of light guiding tons of steel safely through the network. Some signals are automatic. They respond to trains without any human input. Others are controlled by dispatchers in distant offices. But even controlled signals follow rules. The dispatcher cannot set a signal to green if a train occupies that section. The system will not allow it. This protection is called interlocking. Multiple safety measures that interlock with each other. No single failure can cause a crash. The signal might break. The track circuit might fail. But other systems catch these failures and default to red. Stop is always the safe position. At night, signal lights are the only color in dark landscapes. A green dot in the distance. A red glow reflecting off rails. These lights have meanings beyond their function. They represent watchfulness. Someone or something is paying attention. Older signals used moving arms instead of lights. These semaphores would lift or drop to indicate clear or stop. You can still see a few. Mechanical relics that move with satisfying clunks. The same physics that kept trains safe 100 years ago. But lights are better. Visible in fog, clear in snow, no moving parts to freeze. The transition from semaphores to lights happened slowly, station by station, signal by signal. Now almost all use lights. Engineers learn to read signals from far away, a tiny dot of color barely visible. They know what it means and react accordingly. Their eyes are trained to distinguish red from yellow, at distances most people could not manage. The signals follow a hierarchy. Automatic signals can be overridden by controlled signals. Controlled signals must obey the track circuits. Track circuits cannot be fooled by anything lighter than a train, each layer protecting against failures in the layer above. This system has saved countless lives, prevented crashes that would have been catastrophic. And it does this quietly, with colored lights, with simple circuits, with physics that has not changed since the system was invented. Right now, thousands of signal lights glow beside tracks worldwide. Most show green, trains flowing safely through the network. A few show yellow, caution being exercised. Some show red, protection being provided. all of them speaking a language of safety, all of them keeping the conversation going that says trains can share the same rails and never meet except where they should. Those signals guide trains you never see, the freight trains that move at midnight. While you sleep, they cross the country carrying everything. Freight trains run mostly at night. This is when passenger trains rest, when tracks become available, when the schedule opens up for slower, heavier loads that take hours to pass through a single state. A coal train leaving Wyoming at sunset will reach Nebraska by sunrise. 100 cars full of coal. Each car holds 100 tons. That is 10,000 tons total, moving at 50 miles per hour through darkness. The engineer alone in the cab, the landscape empty around them. What else moves at midnight? Grain from Kansas, lumber from Oregon, containers from ports carrying goods from across the ocean. Everything you see in stores traveled by train at some point, probably while you were asleep. The loneliest sound in the world might be a freight train horn at 3 in the morning, miles from any town, echoing across empty plains. The engineer blows for crossings that no one is crossing, for roads where no cars travel. The rules require it. So the horn sounds into emptiness. Inside the locomotive, the engineer sits surrounded by screens and switches. The only light for miles comes from their cab. They drink coffee, watch the track ahead, monitor speed and fuel. The radio stays quiet. Everyone else is asleep. Some freight trains are over a mile long. You can stand at a crossing and wait 5 minutes for one to pass. Car after car after car. All of them connected. All of them being pulled by 3 or 4 locomotives at the front. These trains are too long to fit in most sidings. So dispatchers have to plan carefully. They send the freight trains through when they know the track will stay clear. No passenger trains coming. No local trains needing to cross. Just empty track stretching ahead. The engineer of a midnight freight sees things most people never witness. Deer standing beside the tracks, their eyes reflecting the locomotive headlight. Foxes hunting in fields. Owls on fence posts. The train passes through their world like a visitor from another dimension. Sometimes the train passes through small towns. The crossing lights flash. The bells ring. But no one comes to watch. Windows stay dark. The train is just another night sound, like wind or distant thunder, something the sleeping town barely notices. The loads these trains carry are not glamorous. Coal, gravel, chemicals in tank cars, lumber, grain, the raw materials that make everything else possible. Not finished products, not consumer goods, just the building blocks of modern life. Each car has a number painted on its side. This number tells the railroad who owns it, where it is supposed to go, what it is allowed to carry. Computers track every car, know where each one is at any moment. The train might be lonely, but it is never lost. The locomotives at night glow with small lights, red on the back, white on the front, green and yellow on the sides. These lights are required by law. They make the train visible to anyone working near the tracks. They turn the locomotive into a constellation moving across the land. In winter, midnight freight trains push through snow. The plow on the front clears the track. Ice forms on everything. The engineer keeps the cab warm, but the cold still seeps in around the windows. The heater runs constantly. The windshield wipers fight ice instead of rain. These trains carry the economy, not the visible parts, the hidden parts, the resources that get transformed into products. The journey most people never think about. From mine to factory, from farm to processing plant, all of it moving at night. The engineer reaches their destination as dawn breaks. The train pulls into a yard. Other workers take over. The engineer has been awake all night, driving through darkness, keeping thousands of tons moving safely. They sign out, go home, sleep while the day shift takes over. And tonight, it will happen again. Different trains, different engineers, same darkness, same lonely journey across the sleeping landscape. After that train passes, someone walks the track, checking every mile, looking for what might go wrong before it does. Track inspectors walk alone. They carry a small bag of tools, a radio, a notebook. They start at dawn and walk until the section is complete. Sometimes 10 miles, sometimes 20, always on foot, always paying attention. They look for cracks in the rails. These cracks start small, hairline fractures invisible to anyone not searching. But they grow. The constant pounding of wheels makes them wider, deeper. Eventually, a crack can break a rail completely. The inspector finds them before that happens. A broken rail means derailment, means catastrophe. So, the inspector walks slowly, looks carefully, runs their eyes along every inch of steel. The crack might be shorter than your fingernail, but it shows up as a thin, dark line in the polished surface. The inspector sees it. They mark the rail with spray paint, make a note of the exact location, call it in. A repair crew will arrive within hours, replace that section of rail. The train traveling that route tomorrow will never know how close it came to disaster. The inspector also checks the ballast, those rocks we talked about earlier. Are they shifting, washing away, settling unevenly? Any of these means the track might not stay level. A train on an unlevel track can tip. They check the ties. Are they cracking, rotting, coming loose? A weak tie cannot hold the rail properly. The rail might shift underweight. Again, disaster waiting to happen. The inspector notes which ties need replacing. The bolts that connect rail sections get checked. Are they tight, rusted, missing? Each bolt matters. Each one contributes to keeping the rails aligned. Lose enough bolts, and the rails spread apart. The inspector carries a wrench and tightens loose bolts as they find them. This work is meditative, walking mile after mile, looking at the same things over and over. Rail, ballast, ties, bolts. Rail, ballast, ties, bolts. The repetition becomes a rhythm. The inspector's eyes learn what normal looks like. Anything abnormal jumps out immediately. They walk in all weather, rain, snow, blazing heat. The track does not stop needing inspection because the weather is bad. If anything, bad weather makes inspection more important. Water erodes ballast. Ice cracks ties. Heat expands rails beyond their gaps. The inspector walks between trains. The schedule gives them windows, specific times when no trains will pass through their section. They walk fast during these windows, get as far as possible, then step off the track when a train approaches. Let it pass. Resume walking. Some inspectors have walked the same section for 20 years. They know every curve, every bridge, every culvert. They notice when anything changes, when a tree falls near the track, when a stream starts eroding an embankment. These observations prevent future problems. The job requires patience. You cannot rush inspection. You must see every inch. Miss one crack and people might die. The inspector carries this weight with every step. Their attention keeps the system safe. They also watch for vandalism, cut wires, damaged switches, objects left on the track. People sometimes sabotage railways. The inspector finds and reports these things, calls law enforcement if necessary, protects the track from intentional harm. At the end of their route, the inspector reports to their supervisor, lists everything found, everything fixed, everything that needs attention. The supervisor logs this information, assigns repair crews, schedules follow-up inspections. Then the inspector goes home. Tomorrow they will walk a different section, or the same section again, always walking, always watching, always protecting trains they will never ride, passengers they will never meet. This is unglamorous work. No one sees it. No one thanks the inspector. But without them, the whole system fails. They are the careful attention that stands between routine and catastrophe. Right now, inspectors are walking tracks around the world, looking at rails, checking ties, finding small problems before they become large ones, walking mile after quiet mile, keeping the trains running safely. Those safe rails have carried trains at many speeds. Each era had its pace. Each speed changed what was possible. The first trains moved at 15 miles per hour. This seemed impossibly fast in 1830. Faster than any horse, faster than humans had ever travelled on land. People worried that such speed might be dangerous, that the human body could not handle it. They were wrong. The body adapted easily. Within years, trains reached 30 miles per hour, then 40, then 50. Each increase brought the world closer together. A journey that took 3 days by horse and wagon took 1 day by train, then half a day, then hours. Cities that were distant became neighbours. People who would never have met crossed paths in train stations. Steam locomotives had a rhythm you could hear. The chuff, chuff, chuff of the pistons. Slower when starting, faster as speed built. The sound told you exactly how fast the train was moving. Your ears became a speedometer. Those steam trains topped out around 70 miles per hour, fast enough for their time, but they needed to stop frequently, for water, for coal. The fuel they burned was bulky, heavy. They could not carry enough for long distances. Diesel changed this. Diesel locomotives could run for hundreds of miles without stopping. They carried fuel more efficiently, pulled heavier loads, maintained speed better on hills. The same route that took 8 hours by steam took 6 by diesel. Electric trains went faster still. No fuel to carry, no engine weight, just motors and wheels. European trains reached 100 miles per hour, then 120. Passengers could cross entire countries in a morning. But some trains still move slowly, on purpose. Scenic railways that wind through mountains. Tourist trains that want you to see the view. The speed is the point, or the lack of it. Slowing down becomes the destination. In Japan, engineers designed trains that would go even faster. The Shinkansen, bullet trains. They reached 130 miles per hour, then 180, then over 200. At these speeds, the world blurs. Cities pass in minutes. These fast trains need special tracks. Perfectly straight, perfectly level. No curves sharper than 2 miles radius. The engineering required is extraordinary. The entire line becomes one long precision instrument. Passengers on bullet trains feel strange sensations. The train rocks gently, but moves so fast that your brain struggles to process it. You look out the window and cannot focus on anything. Everything is motion. The only way to know how fast you are going is to watch the speedometer in the car. The fastest trains do not use wheels anymore. They float on magnetic fields. Maglev trains. They hover above the track. No friction, no contact, nothing to slow them down except air resistance. These trains reach 300 miles per hour. At that speed, the journey matters less than the destination. You board in one city, blink, arrive in another. The landscape between becomes theoretical. You know it exists, but you barely see it. Yet slow trains still have value. They let you watch the world pass, see the small towns, notice the fields and forests. Being on a slow train feels like meditation. The pace allows observation, allows thought. Speed made the modern world possible. Quick transport of goods, rapid movement of people, information flowing at the pace of trains instead of horses. Everything accelerated because trains could move faster. But something was lost too. The contemplation of journey, the awareness of distance. When everything is fast, nowhere feels far. The effort of travel disappears. With it goes some of the satisfaction of arrival. Perhaps this is why some people prefer slow trains, why scenic railways stay in business, why tourists choose routes that take all day instead of all hour. Speed is not always the goal. Sometimes the journey itself is the reason. Right now, trains of every speed are moving. Bullet trains in Japan, freight trains in Montana, scenic trains in Switzerland, each at its own pace, each serving its own purpose. Fast and slow both have their place in the world of rails. All those trains, fast and slow, create something unintended, a ribbon of wild space running through the modern world. Railroad corridors are nature's accidents. The land beside the tracks is not farmed, not built on, not disturbed except by passing trains. This creates strips of wilderness connecting distant places. Plants grow beside tracks that grow nowhere else nearby. Wildflowers that need open ground. Grasses that thrive in gravel. Species that would disappear from developed areas survive in these narrow strips. The railroad becomes a refuge without meaning to. Some plants arrived as stowaways, seeds stuck to train cars, carried hundreds of miles from their original homes. They fell off near the tracks, found suitable ground, grew. Now you can find California poppies in Montana, Texas bluebonnets in Oregon. The trains distribute seeds better than wind ever could. The ballast creates unique growing conditions. It drains quickly, gets hot in summer, freezes hard in winter. Only tough plants survive. These become their own ecosystem, hardy, resilient, adapted to disturbance. Animals use railroad corridors as highways. Deer follow the cleared land beside the tracks. It gives them routes through forests without fighting undergrowth. Predators follow the deer. Birds follow the insects that live in the trackside plants. The railroad becomes a food chain. Bridges over streams create shelter for animals. The space beneath the bridge stays dry in rain, warm in winter. Foxes den under railroad bridges. Raccoons too. They have learned that trains pass overhead but never come underneath. The noise of trains does not bother animals as much as you might think. They learn the schedule, know when trains pass, adjust their behavior accordingly. A fox hunting near the tracks will pause when a train approaches. Wait for it to pass. Resume hunting. Some birds nest in old rail yards, abandoned buildings, rusty equipment. These spaces are quiet now. The birds have claimed them. Swallows build nests under eaves. Owls roost in empty warehouses. The railroad's past becomes the bird's present. Railroad cuts through hills expose rock layers. These create microclimates. South-facing cuts stay warm. North-facing cuts stay cool. Different plants grow on each side. The variety increases the number of species the corridor can support. Wetlands form where railroad embankments block water flow. These accidental ponds become habitat for frogs, dragonflies, water birds. Engineers built the embankment to support track. Nature turned it into an ecosystem. Some conservation groups now recognize railroad corridors as vital wildlife passages. In fragmented landscapes, where development has broken up natural areas, these strips of land along tracks let animals move between remaining wild spaces. A deer can travel 50 miles following railroad corridors without crossing a city. The trains themselves barely notice any of this. They pass through these corridors, focused on their destinations. The ecosystem happens around them, beside them, despite them. The railroad provides structure. Nature fills in the details. Plants that grow near tracks are tougher than their forest cousins. They survive being sprayed with gravel kicked up by trains, being covered in diesel exhaust, being walked on by track workers. This toughness makes them useful. Botanists study them to understand plant resilience. In autumn, the trackside trees turn colours just like forest trees, but you see them differently, framed by the corridor, a tunnel of colour that the train passes through. Passengers watch the show. The trees do not perform for trains, but the trains carry audiences to them. Winter reveals the structure of trackside ecosystems. Without leaves, you see the networks, where animals walk, where water flows, where different zones meet. The railroad corridor becomes a map of natural connections, and through all seasons, the trains continue, carrying people, carrying goods, unknowingly carrying seeds, unknowingly creating pathways. The railroad serves human purposes, but it serves nature too, an accidental gift, a side effect of connecting cities, a ribbon of life running alongside ribbons of steel. Those trains travelling through nature must rest eventually. They have their own spaces, buildings designed specifically for sleeping locomotives. Roundhouses are circular or semicircular. A turntable sits in the center. Tracks radiate out like spokes on a wheel. Each spoke leads to a stall. Each stall holds one locomotive. The building wraps around them all. The turntable is a bridge that rotates. It holds a single locomotive. Workers push or power the table to align the locomotive with whichever stall is open. The locomotive rolls in. The turntable rotates to the next locomotive that needs moving. Simple, efficient, elegant. These buildings were necessary because early locomotives could not easily run in reverse. They had a front and a back. The engineer needed to see forward. So at the end of a route, the locomotive had to be turned around. The turntable did this. Modern locomotives can run either direction. They have cabs on both ends, or controls that work equally well, going forward or backward. So most roundhouses closed, became obsolete. The turntables stopped turning, but the buildings remain. Some converted to museums, others to storage, many just abandoned. These empty roundhouses have a particular kind of beauty. Industrial ruins, monuments to an older way. Inside an abandoned roundhouse, light comes through broken windows. Dust floats in the beams. The tracks are still there, rusted but present. You can see exactly where each locomotive would have stood. Count the stalls. Imagine them full. The roof of a roundhouse is curved to follow the circular wall. This creates interesting acoustics. Sounds echo. A footstep becomes many footsteps. Your voice returns to you from multiple directions. The space feels alive even when empty. Some roundhouses are massive, 50 stalls or more. These served major rail yards, where dozens of locomotives needed service every night. The building would have been constantly active, locomotives coming and going, workers maintaining, the turntable rotating all night long. Others are small, 6 stalls, 10. These served branch lines, small towns, places where only a few locomotives operated. The buildings are more intimate. You can imagine knowing each locomotive personally, watching the same engines return each evening. The floors are often made of brick or stone, materials that could handle oil and grease and coal dust. These floors have seen decades of spills. The stains tell stories, where locomotives leaked, where workers dropped tools, where coal scattered. In working roundhouses, each stall had equipment, lifts to raise locomotives for wheel inspection, tools for repairs, spare parts on shelves, everything a locomotive might need. These spaces were part garage, part hospital, part home. The smell of a working roundhouse was distinctive. Hot oil, grease, coal smoke, steam, metal. These scents mixed into something that meant safety and maintenance and care. The locomotives rested, but they were being looked after. At night, a working roundhouse would glow. Lights in each stall, the turntable moving occasionally, the building humming with low activity. It would have been peaceful in its way. Purposeful work, happening slowly through the dark hours. Some roundhouses are being restored, brought back to working condition. These restorations are expensive, difficult, but worth it to preserve the history, to show how things worked, to let people see a turntable actually turn. The turntable mechanism is surprisingly simple. A pivot in the center, wheels at the ends, originally turned by hand. One person pushing could rotate an entire locomotive. Later versions used electric motors, but the principle stayed the same. Standing in the center of a roundhouse, you can see all the stalls at once. This was intentional. The supervisor could watch everything from one spot, see which locomotives were ready, which needed more work, which stalls were empty. These buildings represent an era when locomotives needed care, when they could not just park anywhere, when the end of the day meant returning to a specific place, a home of sorts. The roundhouse was where locomotives slept, where they recovered from their journeys, where they prepared for tomorrow. And now, most are silent. The turntables locked, the stalls empty, but the buildings remain as reminders, as evidence of what was needed, as monuments to the care we once gave to machines. From those silent roundhouses, a sound once carried across entire towns. The train whistle, a voice that could speak for miles. Train whistles are not random noise. They are communication. Each pattern means something specific. 2 long blasts, 1 short, 1 long. This sequence is required at every road crossing. It tells anyone nearby that a train is approaching. Get clear. The pattern has been standard for over a century. An engineer in Maine uses the same sequence as an engineer in California. The whistle becomes a universal language. You hear it and know instantly what it means, even if you have never consciously learned. The whistle itself is carefully designed. Most use 3 notes playing simultaneously. These notes form a chord, usually a major chord. This combination of frequencies travels farther than a single note. The sound waves reinforce each other, carry through wind and weather. Low frequencies travel farthest. High frequencies fade quickly, so train whistles emphasize low tones. That deep, mournful sound cuts through distance. A whistle blown in a valley can be heard on hills 5 miles away. The Doppler effect makes the whistle sound different depending on where you stand. Ahead of the train, the pitch sounds higher. Behind the train, lower. This shift happens because sound waves bunch up as the train approaches, stretch out as it moves away. Your brain uses this shift to judge distance and direction. Even without seeing the train, you know whether it is coming or going, whether it is near or far. The whistle gives you information beyond its intended message. Some whistles have distinctive voices. Engineers recognize their own locomotives by sound. That whistle has a slight hoarseness. This one rings clearer. That one has a deeper tone. Each locomotive develops personality through its whistle. In fog, the whistle becomes critical. Engineers blow it constantly. The sound bounces off trees and buildings, comes back as echoes. This helps them judge their surroundings, navigate when they cannot see. At night, a distant whistle carries a particular emotion, loneliness perhaps, or peace. Something about the sound in darkness speaks to a deeper part of us. The whistle becomes less about trains and more about distance itself, about separation, about the world being larger than our immediate surroundings. People who live near tracks learn to sleep through whistles. The sound becomes part of the background, like wind or rain. But visitors notice. They lie awake, listening to trains passing in the night, the whistle marking time, measuring darkness. Some cities have tried to ban train whistles in residential areas, create quiet zones, but this creates danger. People rely on that sound for warning. Without it, crossings become more hazardous. Most quiet zones add extra lights and gates to compensate. The whistle is one of the last completely mechanical features on modern trains. No electronics, no computers, just compressed air forced through metal. Simple physics creating a sound that technology has never improved upon. Different countries use different whistle patterns. European trains sound different from American trains. Asian trains different still, but all use similar principles. All create sounds that carry, that warn, that communicate. In old recordings, you can hear steam whistles. These had a different quality, more haunting somehow, the sound of steam escaping under pressure. Modern diesel and electric whistles use compressed air, sharper, clearer, but perhaps less soulful. The whistle is also farewell. When a train leaves a station, the engineer blows it, saying goodbye to the platform, to the people waiting, to the place itself. The sound trails away as the train moves into distance. And of all train sounds, the whistle is most human. It is voice. It speaks. It calls out across empty landscapes. It announces presence. It marks time and distance and movement. A machine that learned to sing. A tool that became something more. Right now, somewhere a whistle is sounding, echoing across fields, bouncing off mountains, reaching into homes where people pause and listen. That sound has been constant for nearly 200 years. The voice of trains calling through the world. That whistle called across distances that were once impossible to cross. Before trains, the world was vast, separated. Trains made it smaller. A letter from New York to San Francisco took 6 months by ship in 1840, around South America, through storms, if the ship arrived at all. That same letter took 10 days by train in 1870. The railroad connected the coasts, made them neighbors instead of distant lands. People who had never left their towns could suddenly travel hundreds of miles, see mountains, oceans, cities they had only read about. The train tickets cost less than a week's wages. Travel became possible for ordinary people. not just the wealthy. This changed everything. Ideas spread faster. News arrived quickly. Someone could leave home and return within days instead of months. The world opened up, became accessible. The rails stitched distance into something manageable. Families stayed connected across greater distances. A son could move west for work and still visit his parents twice a year. Before trains, moving far meant goodbye forever. Letters took months. Visits were impossible. The train made separation less permanent. Commerce followed the rails. Goods that spoiled quickly could now travel. Fresh fruit from California reached Chicago. Seafood from Boston reached Kansas. Local products became national products. The economy expanded because distance stopped being a barrier. Towns competed to have railroads pass through. A town with a station grew, attracted business, brought travelers. Towns without stations faded, became backwaters. The railroad determined which places mattered, which thrived, which disappeared. The transcontinental railroad in America was more than transportation. It was connection. East meeting west, the coasts joining, a nation that existed mostly on maps becoming real. You could board a train in one ocean and reach the other ocean without ever leaving rails. Other countries built their own networks. India, Russia, Australia. Each railway system connected regions that had been isolated, made large countries function as units instead of collections of separate places. The Orient Express connected Paris to Istanbul. This was not just a train. It was a moving hotel, a luxury journey across Europe. Passengers ate in dining cars, slept in bedroom cars, watched entire countries pass their windows. The journey itself became the destination. In remote areas, the train was a lifeline. Supplies arrived by rail, mail arrived, medicine. Everything a distant town needed came on the train. Miss the train, and you waited days or weeks for the next one. The postal system depended on trains, entire cars dedicated to sorting mail. Workers inside organized letters while the train moved. By the time the train reached its destination, the mail was ready for delivery. This speed revolutionized communication. People fell in love on trains, met strangers who became friends. Shared journeys created connections impossible in stationary life. Something about moving through space together builds intimacy, trust. The train became a place where normal social rules relaxed. Station platforms were meeting places. People gathered to see who arrived, who left. The platform was theatre. Goodbyes and reunions happening constantly. Tears and laughter. The platform held every human emotion. Trains carried soldiers to wars, refugees from disasters, immigrants to new lives. The rails became paths of history. Every major event involved trains somehow. Moving people, moving supplies, connecting the pieces that made events possible. Now, planes are faster, cars more flexible, but trains still connect in ways other transport cannot. They follow fixed paths, create guaranteed meetings between distant places. You can rely on the train, know it will be there, going where it always goes. The romance of train travel never quite died. Overnight journeys still exist, long routes through beautiful country. People choose trains not for speed, but for experience, for the pleasure of watching landscape change, for the rhythm and peace of rail travel. Right now, trains are connecting people across thousands of miles. Someone boarding in one city will wake in another. Letters moving through postal cars. Goods traveling to distant markets. The network functioning as it has for almost 2 centuries, bringing the world together, making distance smaller, turning separation into temporary. The connection continues to evolve. New technologies promise to make trains even faster, even smoother, even more impossible. Magnetic levitation trains already exist. Maglev. These trains do not touch the track. They float above it on magnetic fields. The track contains magnets. The train contains magnets. The fields repel each other, push the train upward, hold it suspended in air. With no contact, there is no friction. The only resistance is air. So maglev trains can reach speeds traditional trains cannot. Over 300 miles per hour, fast enough that the landscape becomes abstract, a blur of color, the journey reduced to pure speed. Japan and China operate maglev lines now. Short routes, expensive to build, but they prove the concept works. You can float a train on invisible force. You can move it faster than anything with wheels. The magnetic fields also propel the train. The track magnetizes in sections. Pull the train forward. Push it from behind. The train does not have engines in the traditional sense. It has electromagnets. The track does all the work. This sounds like science fiction, but it is physics. The same forces that make magnets stick to refrigerators scaled up enormous amounts. Strong enough to lift tons. Precise enough to keep the train stable. Hyperloop is the next idea. Trains in vacuum tubes. Remove the air and you remove air resistance. The train can go even faster. Theoretical speeds reach 700 miles per hour. City to city in minutes. The concept is simple. The engineering is not. Building tubes that can maintain vacuum over hundreds of miles. Making them safe. Making them affordable. These challenges have not been solved yet, but companies are trying. Some people say Hyperloop will never work. Too expensive. Too complicated. Too many things that could go wrong. Others believe it is inevitable. The next step in transportation evolution. Meanwhile, existing trains get better. Quieter motors, smoother suspension, more efficient power systems, small improvements that add up. Make the experience better. Make the technology more sustainable. Electric trains powered by renewable energy become truly clean transportation. Solar panels, wind turbines, hydroelectric dams, all feeding power to trains, moving people and goods without burning fuel. This is possible now, not future speculation, present reality in some places. Automated trains run without engineers. Computers control speed, monitor systems, handle all the decisions. These trains run in cities, on subways, on some passenger lines. The technology exists. The question is trust, acceptance, letting machines do what humans have always done. Self-driving trains are safer than human-driven ones in many ways. They do not get tired, do not make emotional decisions, follow programming perfectly, but they also cannot adapt to unexpected situations the way humans can. The balance between automation and human judgment continues to shift. Battery-powered trains are being tested. No overhead wires needed. No diesel fuel. Just batteries charged at stations. These work for shorter routes. The technology improves each year. Batteries get lighter, hold more charge, last longer. Hydrogen fuel cells offer another option. Hydrogen plus oxygen makes electricity. The only emission is water. These trains could run anywhere. No tracks with wires. No battery range limits. Just clean power and water vapor. The future might hold trains we cannot imagine yet. Technologies not invented. Solutions to problems we do not know exist. But they will still be trains. still running on guidance, still connecting places, still moving people and goods. Some things will not change. The rhythm of wheels, the whistle calling, the stations waiting. These are fundamental, not tied to specific technology, the essence of what trains are. The rails laid 100 years ago still carry trains today. The rails laid today will carry trains 100 years from now, even if those trains float, even if they travel in tubes, even if they run on technologies we cannot predict. Because trains are not just about technology. They are about connection, about moving through space together, about trusting steel and schedules and the people who keep the system running. The future will change how trains work, but not why we need them. And through all of this, past, present, future, the train is still moving somewhere tonight. Right now, wheels are turning on rails. That tiny point of contact we started with. Steel on steel. The weight that floats. The friction that barely exists. It is happening in this moment. As you listen, as you rest, a locomotive pulls its load across a dark plain. The whistle sounds. Two long, one short, one long. The pattern unchanged for generations. The sound carrying through night air, reaching no one. Reaching everyone. In a station somewhere, someone waits on a platform, watching down the track for lights. The train will arrive exactly on schedule. The clocks synchronized. The timing perfect. Someone else will board, will trust the steel, will let motion carry them somewhere new. The rails stretch unbroken, connected to other rails, connected to more rails beyond those. A network covering continents, linking cities, joining coasts, the same rails we have followed through this journey together, the same steel that has carried billions of people, trillions of tons of goods. Those rails pass through the ecosystems they created, the animals sleeping near the tracks, the plants growing in the ballast, nature adapting, using what humans built, finding home in the margins. The bridges hold firm, concrete and steel spanning rivers and valleys. The tunnels pierce mountains, darkness and light and darkness again. The infrastructure standing watch, doing its quiet work, keeping the path clear. Signal lights glow their colors, green for clear, yellow for caution, red for stop. The language of safety spoken constantly, the conversation that never ends, the protection that never sleeps. Somewhere an inspector walks the rails, looking for cracks, finding small problems before they become large ones. The careful attention that keeps everything running, the eyes that watch, the hands that maintain. In a roundhouse, a locomotive rests, or in a modern depot, somewhere dedicated to care, to preparation, to the pause between journeys. Even machines need to rest. Even steel needs tending. All of this happens whether you think about it or not. The system runs, the trains move, the network functions. Day and night, season after season, year after year. The rhythm continues. You started this journey knowing trains were heavy, knowing they moved on steel. Now you know how. You know why. You understand the elegant simplicity, the careful complexity, the balance between force and friction, between power and precision. You know the sounds mean something, the whistle speaking, the wheels clicking, the rhythm that helps us sleep. These are not random noises. They are language, communication, the voice of movement. You know the rails are older than they look, connected to Roman chariots, built to last centuries, maintained by people who walk every mile, who care about details invisible to passengers. You know trains connected the world, made distance smaller, brought people together, carried everything we needed across impossible space, and continue to do this every hour, every day. You know the future holds new technologies, magnetic fields, vacuum tubes, batteries, and hydrogen. But also know that something essential will remain: the concept of guided travel, of shared journey, of connection through motion. The train is still out there, moving through the dark, its wheels turning in perfect rhythm, the engineer watching ahead, the signals guiding, the rails holding steady. And you can rest now. Let your thoughts settle like dust in an empty roundhouse. Let your breathing match the rhythm of wheels on rails. Let yourself trust the journey, the system, the careful engineering that keeps everything moving safely. Somewhere a train is approaching your town, or leaving it, or passing through in the distance. The whistle will sound, the crossing bells will ring, and the world will keep turning, connected, moving, alive with purpose and motion. Thank you for taking this journey with me, for exploring the quiet wonders of trains. If this brought you peace, I would love for you to subscribe, to join this community of people who find rest in understanding how things work. Leave a comment about your own experiences with trains. Where were you when you heard one last? What did it mean to you? And now, let the rhythm carry you to sleep. The wheels still turning somewhere, the rails still stretching ahead, the train still moving through the peaceful dark. Rest well, and so we return to where we began. Tonight, we explored the world of trains, those machines that weigh as much as elephants, yet glide on steel thinner than your finger. We followed them through their complete journey, from wheel to rail, from sound to signal, from past to future. You learned how friction disappears between steel and steel, how signals speak in coloured light, how bridges hold impossible weight, how tunnels pierce mountains, how everything connects through careful engineering and quiet attention. But more than facts, I hope you found something else, a sense of calm, a rhythm that matches your breathing, a reminder that the world contains wonder in ordinary things, that trains passing in the night are more than transportation. They are proof that humans can build systems that work, that last, that connect us across distance and time. If this journey brought you peace, if these quiet explorations help you rest, I would be grateful if you subscribed to Simple Science for Sleep. There are so many more wonders to discover together, so many more topics that can help us find calm in understanding. Join this community of curious minds who love to learn as they relax. And please, leave a comment. Tell me about your own experiences with trains. When did you last hear one? What memories does that sound bring back? Where are you listening from right now? I love knowing we are scattered across the world, all finding rest together in these small wonders of science and engineering. Next time, we will explore something equally fascinating, something else hiding in plain sight. Another topic that combines wonder with the kind of gentle knowledge that helps us sleep. I will meet you here again. Same peaceful place, same quiet curiosity. For now, let the rhythm of wheels on rails carry you into rest. The train is still moving somewhere, the wheels still turning, the world still connected by steel and motion, and the simple physics of weight that floats. Thank you for traveling with me tonight. Sleep well, wherever you are. Until next time.